The October sun was already beginning its slow descent over Dallas when Linda Calloway pulled her silver Honda Accord into the parking lot of the Meyerson Symphony Center. She sat for a moment with the engine off, her hands resting on the steering wheel, eyes fixed on the gleaming curved glass facade of the building that had become both her greatest achievement and her most relentless source of anxiety over the past 14 months. She was 43 years old, and she looked every single one of those years this morning. Not in a defeated way. Linda had never been the kind of woman who surrendered to exhaustion without a fight, but in the way that someone looks when they have been carrying something heavy for a very long time and have simply grown accustomed to the weight. Her dark auburn hair was pulled back in a neat bun, a few silver strands catching the pale morning light. Her blazer was pressed, her lipstick was applied with precision, and her leather portfolio was tucked under her arm like a shield. But behind her eyes, something was fraying. The Lone Star Hearts Gala was 11 days away. 11 days to make sure that everything, every floral arrangement, every sound check, every donor seating chart, every media credential, every lighting cue, was exactly as it needed to be for an event that had taken over a year of her life to build. An event that was supposed to raise $3 million for the Children's Rare Disease Foundation of North Texas. An event that had somehow, against all odds and through a chain of phone calls, favors, and sheer relentless persistence, secured not one, but two of the most iconic names in American music. George Strait, Gloria Estefan, on the same stage, in Dallas, for one night only. Linda climbed out of the car and straightened her blazer. She had been the executive director of the foundation for 6 years. She had organized galas before. Smaller ones, quieter ones, the kind that raised a respectable amount of money and sent the wealthy home feeling good about themselves. But nothing like this. Nothing that had required her to negotiate directly with talent agencies in Nashville and Miami. Nothing that had put her on calls with publicists who treated her like a minor inconvenience. Nothing that had demanded she bet the foundation's entire annual operating reserve on a single evening. If the gala failed, the foundation would not survive the fiscal year. She had not told her board that part yet. The lobby of the Meyerson was cool and quiet when she pushed through the glass doors. The administrative offices were on the second floor, accessible through a side corridor that bypassed the main concert hall. Linda took the stairs. She always took the stairs, a small act of discipline she had maintained since her 30s, and emerged into the carpeted hallway where her team was already assembled, laptops open, phones pressed to ears, the low hum of organized chaos filling the air. Linda, her assistant, a sharp 26-year-old named Cassie Norwood, fell into step beside her immediately. Cassie was the kind of person who solved 3 problems before breakfast and considered it a slow morning. You have the venue walk through at 10, the florist call at 11:30, and Danny Kowalski called twice already. Of course he did. Linda dropped her portfolio on her desk and reached for the coffee that Cassie had already placed there. What does he want? He said there's an issue with the stage configuration. Something about the monitor placement conflicting with the camera angles for the broadcast feed. Linda took a long sip of coffee. Tell him I'll be there at 2. He said it's urgent. Everything Danny says is urgent. It's how he communicates. She set down the mug. 2 o'clock, tell him. Cassie nodded and retreated. Linda opened her portfolio and spread the event timeline across her desk. A laminated 3-page document that she had revised 17 times and knew by heart. Her eyes moved down the columns of tasks, checking and rechecking. The way a pilot reviews a pre-flight checklist, not because she doubts herself, but because the consequences of a missed item are simply too large to risk. Outside her window, Dallas was waking up. The Arts District was already moving. Delivery trucks threading through the narrow service roads. A crew of landscapers trimming the hedges along Flora Street. Early morning joggers cutting through Clyde Warren Park. It was a Wednesday. In 11 days, it would be a Saturday. And this building would be filled with 1,200 people in formal wear. And somewhere on that stage below her, George Strait would pick up a microphone and the room would hold its breath. Linda allowed herself exactly 4 seconds to feel the wonder of that. Then she picked up her pen and got back to work. Across town, in a converted warehouse studio space in the deep Elm neighborhood, Danny Kowalski was standing in the middle of a room full of cables and arguing with a monitor speaker as though it had personally offended him. He was 51, broad-shouldered, with the kind of weathered face that came from decades of late nights and loud rooms. His gray hair was cut short, his beard slightly overgrown, and he wore the unofficial uniform of every serious audio engineer in America. Dark jeans, worn boots, and a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled to the elbows. He held a measuring tape in one hand and a cup of gas station coffee in the other, and he was pacing the length of the mock stage he'd constructed in his studio to rehearse the Meyerson setup. "Move it 6 inches to the left," he said to his assistant, a lanky 22-year-old named Pete Garland. Pete moved the monitor 6 inches to the left. Danny stared at it. "No, back." Pete moved it back. "Forward 3." Pete moved it forward 3 inches, then looked up with the patient expression of someone who had been through this before. "Danny, it's a monitor. It's going to get repositioned 3 more times once we're actually in the venue." "I know that." "Cease." Danny crouched down and peered at the angle of the speaker cone. "But I need to know where the problems are going to be before I'm standing in front of 1,200 people, and George Strait is looking at me because he can't hear himself in the mix." The mention of George Strait's name still sent a small electric current through Danny's chest. He had worked with major artists before. Country acts out of Nashville, pop artists doing arena tours through Texas. But George Strait was a different category entirely. George Strait was the kind of artist whose reputation for professionalism was matched only by his reputation for expecting the same from everyone around him. You did not show up underprepared for George Strait. You did not improvise. You did not shrug and say you'd figure it out on the night. Danny did not intend to shrug at anything. He stood up and took a long drink of his coffee, grimacing slightly at the temperature. He'd been in the studio since 6 in the morning. The Meyerson walkthrough wasn't until this afternoon. Linda had confirmed 2 o'clock despite Cassie's message, which he'd expected. And he had approximately 8 hours of preparation to cram into the time before it. He set down the coffee and picked up his clipboard, running his eyes down the technical rider documents he'd received from both artists' teams. George Strait's requirements were precise and unambiguous. Specific microphone models, specific in-ear monitor configurations, specific stage positions mapped to the inch. Gloria Estefan's rider was equally detailed, shaped by decades of large-scale production experience. The challenge wasn't that either rider was unreasonable. The challenge was that the Meyerson Symphony Center was not a concert venue in the traditional sense. It was a world-class acoustic hall designed for orchestras, and adapting it for a live pop and country performance without destroying the sonic integrity of the space required a level of technical care that Danny found both daunting and deeply satisfying. He was good at this. He knew he was good at this. He had not always been sure of that. There had been a period, 7 years ago, during a residency production at a casino venue outside of Fort Worth, when Danny Kowalski had made a mistake that had very nearly ended his career. Not a dramatic mistake, not the kind that made headlines, just a quiet, catastrophic error in judgment that had resulted in a performer walking off stage mid-show. A contract dispute that cost the production company $200,000, and Danny's name being quietly removed from the short list of preferred audio engineers that the major Texas booking agencies maintained. He had spent 3 years rebuilding. Smaller gigs, regional tours, a lot of corporate events and wedding receptions that paid the bills and kept him humble. Slowly, through consistent work and word of mouth, he had climbed back. Not all the way back, not to the level he'd been at before, but far enough that when the Lone Star Hearts gala call came in, he had been on the list. He had not told Linda Calloway about Fort Worth. He had not lied exactly. She hadn't asked. But there was a version of his resume that existed in the world, the version that booking agents and event directors saw, that had a clean gap where Fort Worth should have been. And Danny had learned to live with that gap the way you live with a scar. Aware of it always, careful not to let anyone see it at the wrong moment. He turned back to his mock stage setup and crouched again beside the monitor. 3 more inches forward, he said. And let's go through the Gloria Estefan set one more time from the top. Renee Holbrook was 24 years old, and she had been singing in public since she was 7. And she had never once in all those years felt as terrified as she did sitting in the parking lot of the YMCA on Harry Hines Boulevard, staring at the email on her phone. She read it for the 4th time. Dear Ms. Holbrook, on behalf of the Lone Star Hearts Foundation, we are thrilled to confirm your selection as the opening act for the 2024 Lone Star Hearts Gala at the Meyerson Symphony Center on Saturday, October 19th. You will perform a set of 3 original songs beginning at 7:00 p.m., preceding the headline performances by George Strait and Gloria Estefan. She put the phone down in her lap and looked out through the windshield at the gray October sky. 3 original songs. Meyerson Symphony Center. 1,200 people. George Strait and Gloria Estefan. Her hands were shaking. Not with excitement exactly, though there was excitement, a bright and almost painful thread of it running through her chest. It was something more complicated than excitement. It was the particular vertigo of standing at the exact moment your life could split in 2 different directions, and knowing that the path you take in the next 11 days will determine which version of yourself you become. Renee had a voice that people talked about. Not in the polite way that people compliment a local singer, not, "She's very talented for someone from here," but in the way that made music industry people stop scrolling on their phones and look up. She had a 4-octave range that she used sparingly and intelligently, a songwriter's instinct for emotional honesty, and a stage presence that had been described by the Dallas Morning News in a small but memorable review of a Deep Ellum showcase 2 years ago as the kind of thing that makes you put down your drink. She had been trying to build on that review ever since. 2 years of coffee shop gigs and small club nights, and 1 regional tour opening for a mid-level country act that had taken her through Oklahoma, Arkansas, and back to Texas without generating the kind of attention she needed. She had a manager, a well-meaning man named Bill Ashford, who worked out of a small office in Addison and represented mostly regional acts, and a modest following on social media, and 3 original songs that she believed in with her whole heart. Those 3 songs were the ones she would perform at the Meyerson. She picked up her phone again and reread the email, this time letting herself feel the full weight of it. Then she scrolled up to find the earlier message, the one she had received that same morning, 2 hours before the Foundation's confirmation, from a number she hadn't saved but recognized immediately. The message was from her mother. "Renee, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need to see you. It's important. Please." Renee stared at that message for a long time. Then she put her phone in her jacket pocket, got out of the car, and walked into the YMCA for her shift. She taught music to kids on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. It was how she paid rent while the music career was still becoming what she needed it to be. The kids were between 8 and 12 years old, a mixed group of varying skill levels, and they were the best part of her week without exception. She had been doing it for 2 years. She knew all their names, all their rhythms, all the specific ways each of them needed to be encouraged. She needed them today. She needed to stand in front of something uncomplicated and true. But even as she pushed through the door and heard the sound of piano keys being pressed with enthusiastic inaccuracy, her mother's message was sitting in her jacket pocket like a stone. It's important. Renee had not spoken to Carol Holbrook in 14 months. The Meyerson Symphony Center's main stage was larger than it looked from the audience, which was something that Danny noted every time he stood on it. From the back of the hall, the stage appeared contained, intimate even, the kind of proportional space that made acoustic music feel personal. But standing on the polished hardwood floor, with the empty seats rising in curved rows before you, the hall's true scale became apparent. It held 2,300 seats. For the gala, 1,200 would be filled, leaving the upper tiers empty. A decision Linda had made deliberately to create a more intimate atmosphere for the donors. Danny had arrived at 1:45. Linda arrived at 2:02, which for Linda constituted running late. Sorry. She was already scanning the stage as she walked down the center aisle. Florist call ran over. Apparently, calla lilies are back-ordered in the entire state of Texas. That's not a problem I can help you with, Danny said. He was standing at the front edge of the stage with Pete, who was holding a clipboard. This is... He pointed to the floor plan spread out on a folding table at the front of the stage. A detailed diagram showing the proposed placement of microphone stands, monitor speakers, cable runs, camera positions, and lighting rigs. Linda studied it with the focused attention of someone who had learned to read technical documents out of necessity rather than training. Talk me through it. The broadcast team wants cameras here, here, and here. Danny pointed to 3 positions along the front edge and the stage left wing. The talent riders put the monitors here and here. Those positions conflict. If I put the monitors where the riders specify, they're going to be in frame for the broadcast cameras. Can we move the cameras? The broadcast director says no. Those positions are non-negotiable for sight lines. Can we move the monitors? I can move them to here. Danny pointed to an alternative position. But then the on-stage mix changes, and I'd need to compensate with in-ear levels, which means another conversation with both artists' audio teams about their monitor preferences. Linda absorbed this. How long does that conversation take? If they're cooperative, a day. If they're not, he shrugged. Longer. Call them today, Linda said. Both teams. Frame it as a refinement, not a problem. I don't want anyone walking into this thinking we're disorganized. Danny nodded. This was the thing about Linda that he respected. She made decisions cleanly. She didn't circle problems or soften them into ambiguity. She identified the obstacle, determined the response, and moved. It was a quality he associated with people who had been through real difficulty, not people who had merely been busy. There's one more thing, he said. Linda looked at him. The shared segment. He pulled out a separate sheet, a handwritten note from the artistic coordinator at George Strait's agency. The moment when both artists perform together. The agencies are asking us to confirm a song selection. They need it by Friday. I thought they were handling that between themselves. Apparently not. Apparently they want our input on what fits the gala's tone. He paused. Or rather, they want the event director to take ownership of the decision so that neither artist has to be the one who makes the call. Linda almost smiled. Of course they do. She straightened up and tucked the floor plan under her arm. "I'll make some calls. What are the options?" "3 songs on the table. I'll email them to you tonight." "Good." She turned to go, then stopped. "Danny, this is going to be a great night." It was the kind of thing people said to keep energy positive at events. Danny had heard it dozens of times from dozens of event directors, but the way Linda said it, not brightly, not performatively, but with a kind of quiet determination, like she was reminding herself as much as him, made it feel like something different, like a commitment rather than a pleasantry. "Yeah," he said. "It is." He watched her walk back up the aisle, her footsteps barely audible on the carpeted floor. Then he turned back to the stage and got to work. That evening, Linda sat at the kitchen table of her house in the Lakewood neighborhood with a glass of red wine she hadn't touched and a folder of financial documents she had been meaning to review for 3 weeks. The house was quiet. It had been quiet for 8 months since her husband of 12 years, Tom, had moved into the apartment near White Rock Lake that he was now apparently calling home. They were not divorced, they were separated, which was the word that meant they had agreed to pause rather than to end, though Linda was increasingly uncertain about the difference. Tom called twice a week, always on Tuesday evenings and Saturday mornings, always in the measured, careful tone of someone who had been reading about healthy communication and was attempting to practice it. Their conversations were polite and cautious and deeply, thoroughly exhausting. She did not blame him, exactly. She knew she had been absent, not physically, but in every way that mattered in a marriage. The gala had consumed her. The foundation had consumed her. The work had become the place where she felt most herself, and home had become the place where the version of herself that was a wife felt increasingly difficult to locate. Tom had told her this 6 times in the 2 years before he left. She had heard him say it. She had simply not been able to stop. She opened the financial folder and looked at the numbers. The foundation had spent $218,000 in operational costs for the gala so far. Venue deposit, talent fees, which, for George Strait and Gloria Estefan, had required the foundation to secure 2 substantial donor pledges that were specifically earmarked for artist costs: catering, production, marketing, staff over time. If the gala raised $3 million as projected, the foundation would clear enough net revenue to fund 3 years of programming. If it raised less, if it raised, say, $2 million, they would be solvent but strained. If it raised significantly less than that, they would have a serious problem. $3 million required the room to be full of people who were in a generous mood. People in a generous mood required an extraordinary experience. An extraordinary experience required everything to go exactly as planned. Linda took a sip of her wine, finally, and looked out the kitchen window at the dark street. The neighborhood was old and tree-lined, the kind of place where people raised families and stayed for decades. She and Tom had bought this house 11 years ago with the specific intention of filling it with children. They had one daughter, Mia, who was 9 years old and currently staying with Tom. Linda saw her on weekends, this weekend and the weekend after, which would be the weekend of the gala. She had arranged for Tom to have Mia that Saturday so she could be at the Meyerson from 8 in the morning until midnight without distraction. Mia had asked her, the last time they'd spoken on the phone, if she was going to come watch the concert with her and Daddy. Linda had explained, as gently and honestly as she could, that she would be working. "But you love George Strait," Mia had said. "I do, sweetheart. So why can't you watch him?" Linda had not had a good answer for that. She closed the financial folder without reviewing it and drank the rest of her wine in a long, quiet swallow. Outside, a car passed slowly down the street, its headlights sweeping briefly through the kitchen window and then gone. 11 days. She could hold together for 11 days. The Thursday morning rehearsal at Deep Ellum's Sundown studio began at 8 and was supposed to end at noon. By 11:45, it was clear that it would not be ending at noon. Renee stood at the center of the rehearsal room, a modest space with exposed brick walls, a worn hardwood floor, and a PA system that had seen better decades, and sang the bridge of her third song for the 7th time. Behind her, her two-piece backing band, guitarist Kevin Marsh, a 30-year-old session player she'd worked with for 3 years, and drummer Alicia Webb, whose sense of timing was so precise it sometimes felt supernatural, waited with the patient professionalism of people who understood that perfection was the job. The song was called Steady. It was the newest of her 3, written 6 months ago in the kitchen of her apartment on a Tuesday night when she couldn't sleep, and the words had arrived fully formed, the way the best songs always did. It was about her grandmother, her father's mother, a woman named Dorothy Holbrook, who had raised 4 children alone in Beaumont, Texas, after her husband left when Renee was 3 years old. It was about the particular kind of strength that doesn't announce itself, the kind that just keeps showing up. She sang the bridge again. When the ground won't hold, and the walls come in, I find you in the quiet. I start again. Kevin looked up from his guitar. That was it, he said simply. Alicia Webb spun one drumstick between her fingers and nodded once. Renee exhaled. She had heard it too. The moment when a performance stops being a performance and becomes a truth. It didn't happen every time. When it happened, you knew it the way you knew the exact moment when sleep finally comes. Run the full set from the top, she said. Renee, it's almost noon, Kevin said, not complainingly but practically. I know, from the top. They ran it. All 3 songs, beginning to end, no stops. When they finished, the room was quiet for a moment, in the way that rooms go quiet after something has been done properly. Okay, Renee said, that's enough for today. She helped them break down the equipment. She always helped, which was one of the reasons Kevin and Alicia liked working with her. And when the studio was packed and quiet, she sat down on the edge of the small stage platform and took out her phone. Her mother had sent a second message. This one had come in at 9:43, while Renee had been in the middle of her second song. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious. I'm in Dallas. Renee sat with that for a moment. Carol Holbrook lived in Beaumont, had always lived in Beaumont, in the same house where Renee had grown up, 40 minutes from the Gulf Coast. Carol Holbrook did not come to Dallas. Carol Holbrook said she found Dallas overwhelming, too big, too fast, too far from the water. Carol Holbrook being in Dallas meant something had changed. Renee typed back, "Where are you staying?" The response came in 30 seconds. "Motel on Mockingbird. Can we meet for coffee? Just coffee. I promise, I'm not here to make things worse." Renee stared at the screen. In the 14 months since their last conversation, a phone call that had ended in the specific silence that comes after words that cannot be taken back, she had thought about her mother constantly and spoken to her not at all. This was not a situation she had planned or chosen. It was one she had arrived at through a series of events that were complicated and painful and deeply her own, and she had made her peace with it in the way that you make peace with things that still hurt. She typed, "Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., Mudsmith on Lower Greenville." Then she put her phone in her pocket and went home. Bill Ashford's office smelled like old coffee and enthusiasm, which was a combination Renee had come to associate with the particular kind of music business professional who had never made it big, but had never stopped believing in the people who might. His desk was covered in promotional materials, and the walls were hung with framed photos of regional acts he'd worked with over the years. none famous, all proud. Bill was 58 and had been in the Dallas music industry for 30 years and knew everyone who was worth knowing at the regional level. He was not the kind of manager who could open doors in Nashville or New York. He was the kind of manager who could open the doors that led to the doors that led to Nashville and New York, which at Renee's current stage was exactly what she needed. "This gala is a $10 million opportunity in disguise," Bill said, leaning forward across his desk with the expression of a man who has been waiting to deliver this news. "I've already had 3 calls." Renee sat in the chair across from him. "From who?" "2 regional booking agents who want to talk about a spring tour. And," he paused for effect, "someone from a Nashville-based independent label who heard about your selection and wants to set up a call." Renee felt the familiar combination of excitement and caution that had come to define her relationship with professional news. "Which label?" "Clearwater Road Records. They're small, but they have real credibility. 3 artists on their roster who've had top 20 country hits in the last 2 years. I write more pop than country." "I know. But country and pop are the same genre now, and you know it." He leaned back. "The point is, someone is paying attention. The gala puts you in a room with 1,200 high-net-worth donors, a broadcast audience that could hit 50,000 on streaming. And, I cannot stress this enough, Renee, the same stage as George Strait and Gloria Estefan. Your name will be in the same sentence as those names for the rest of your career." Renee nodded. She knew all of this. She had lain awake knowing it for 3 nights. "So what do we do?" she asked. "We prepare like we've never prepared before. We make sure those 3 songs are so tight, so emotionally precise, that nobody in that room checks their phone or looks at the bar." He pulled out a legal pad. "Let's talk about the order." They spent an hour working through performance logistics. Set order, pacing, the specific notes Bill wanted her to hit in her stage patter between songs. Bill was good at this, breaking down the mechanics of performance in ways that never felt mechanical, finding the balance between preparation and spontaneity. When they were done, Renee gathered her things and stood to leave. Then she stopped. "I have to tell you something," she said. Bill looked up. "My mother is in Dallas. She wants to meet." A careful pause. Bill knew the broad outlines of Renee's history with Carol, not the specific details, which Renee had kept to herself, but enough to understand the weight of it. "How do you feel about that?" "I don't know yet." She pulled on her jacket. "I'm meeting her tomorrow morning." "Okay." He set down his pen. "Whatever happens with your mother, whatever she tells you, you have 11 days and 3 songs and a stage that could change your life. That's what's real right now." "I know. Keep it in the front of your mind." "I will." She walked out into the deep Elm afternoon, where the street was beginning to fill with the particular energy of a neighborhood that comes alive at dusk. Murals covered the walls of buildings on both sides of the street. Enormous, vivid, the work of artists who had made this neighborhood their canvas for decades. A food truck on the corner was doing brisk business. Somewhere up the block, someone was doing a sound check at a small venue, the thump of bass carrying through the fall air. This was her city. She had been born in Beaumont, but Dallas was hers. She had come here at 18 for college and had never seriously considered leaving. She knew its rhythms, its neighborhoods, its specific personality, equal parts southern and urban, proud of its history and restless about its future, always building something. She walked to her car with her hands in her pockets and the sound of that distant sound check fading behind her. Danny Kowalski arrived at the Meyerson on Thursday afternoon for a technical survey with the venue's in-house production team and spent 3 hours walking every inch of the stage, the wings, the loading dock, and the control booth with a level of thoroughness that made the venue's technical director, a veteran named Ray Pruitt, both impressed and slightly tired. "You always like this?" Ray asked, watching Danny measure the distance between two ceiling rigging points for the second time. "Pretty much," Danny said without looking up. "The last production company that came through here did the whole survey in 40 minutes. How did their show go?" Ray was quiet for a moment. "There were some issues." "Right." Danny straightened and made a note on his clipboard. "I need the weight ratings on those rigging points. And I want to walk the cable routes again. Both the permanent runs and the temp runs we're laying for the broadcast team." Ray nodded and pulled out his own documentation. The two of them spent another 90 minutes going through the venue's technical infrastructure with the systematic thoroughness that Danny required when he was doing something that mattered. It was during the second pass through the stage left wing, a narrow corridor lined with equipment storage and quick change areas, that Danny found the thing he hadn't been expecting. It was in a conversation, not in the building. Ray had stepped away to take a phone call, and Danny was standing alone in the wing when two members of the venue's staff passed through, talking in low voices that they assumed weren't being overheard. "The Kowalski gig," one of them said. A man in his 30s, tall, with a lanyard around his neck that identified him as part of the technical crew. Danny went very still. "The Fort Worth thing?" the other one said. "Yeah, my cousin worked that show. Said it was a disaster." "How'd he end up on this gig then?" "No idea." "Somebody didn't do their homework, probably." They passed through the wing, and the sound of their voices faded into the corridor. Danny stood with his clipboard against his chest, and his jaw set, and waited until he was certain they were gone. Then he exhaled very slowly through his nose. 7 years. 7 years. And it was still there, running through the industry's informal network of gossip and memory, like a current that never fully dissipated. He had known this was possible. He had known, when he took the gala job, that Dallas was not so large a city that his history in Fort Worth was invisible. The production world was small, and its memory was long. He had told himself it wouldn't matter. He had told himself that the work he'd done in the years since was sufficient evidence of who he was now. Standing in the stage left wing of the Meyerson Symphony Center, alone with the distant sounds of Ray's phone conversation coming from somewhere down the corridor, Danny Kowalski was not entirely sure that was true. He stood there for another moment. Then he made himself walk back out onto the stage, look out at the empty seats, and continue working. Friday morning. The Mudsmith coffee shop on Lower Greenville was warm and smelled of dark roast and cinnamon, and was populated at 9 in the morning by the specific demographic of Dallas residents who worked from home or had flexible hours, laptops open, headphones on, the gentle ambient noise of people in their own worlds. Renee arrived 5 minutes early and claimed a corner table. She ordered a black coffee and sat with it untouched, watching the door. Carol Holbrook arrived at exactly 9 o'clock. She was 56, though she looked older than Renee remembered, which was, Renee knew, partly the natural effect of 14 months and partly something else. She was a small woman, fine-boned, with Renee's same dark eyes and the particular posture of someone who had spent a lifetime making herself compact and unobtrusive. She wore a beige cardigan and carried a purse that Renee recognized from years ago. Her hair was shorter than it had been. She spotted Renee and walked to the table with the careful gait of someone crossing uncertain ground. "Hi, baby," she said. Renee stood, reflex, not intention. And for a moment, they were both just standing there, 2 feet apart, with 14 months and several lifetimes' worth of things between them. "Hi, Mom," Renee said. They sat. Carol ordered a tea. For a minute, neither of them spoke, and the ambient noise of the coffee shop filled the space between them. The hiss of the espresso machine, a burst of soft laughter from a nearby table, the gentle background music of something acoustic and indistinct. "You look good," Carol said finally. "You don't have to say that." "I mean it." Carol wrapped both hands around her tea mug. "You look strong." Renee looked at her mother and waited. Carol took a breath. "I have to tell you something about your father." Renee's father, James Holbrook, had left when Renee was 3 years old. Not dramatically, not with a scene or a confrontation, but in the quiet and thorough way of someone who has decided that the life they are living is not the life they intended, and has simply stepped sideways into a different one. He had lived in Houston for as long as Renee had been aware of his existence, worked in construction management, remarried, had 2 more children. He and Renee had spoken perhaps 8 times in her life. None of those conversations substantial. "What about him?" Renee asked. Carol looked into her tea. "He's sick. It's his heart. He had a serious episode 3 weeks ago. They thought at first it might be a full cardiac event, but it wasn't. It was a warning." She paused. "He's been asking for you." Renee absorbed this with the careful stillness of someone trained to manage emotion in performance. "He's been asking for me. I know how that sounds." "Do you?" "Renee." Carol looked up. Her eyes were steady, though not dry. "I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm not here to say you have to see him or forgive him or feel anything in particular. I'm here because he asked me to come tell you in person. Because he said that if he called, you wouldn't pick up. And he was probably right." She paused. "He wants a chance, that's all." Renee looked at the table. The black coffee in front of her had gone slightly cooler. "Why are you doing this for him?" she asked. "After everything." Carol was quiet for a moment. "Because I spent a long time not forgiving people," she said. "And I don't think it helped me as much as I thought it would." The coffee shop continued its gentle ambient life around them. Someone's phone rang and was quickly silenced. The espresso machine hissed again. Renee picked up her coffee and drank it slowly. She said nothing for a long time. "I have a major performance in 11 days, she said finally. "I know. I looked it up after you told me a while back. My whole focus has to be on that right now." "I understand." After the performance, Renee set down the cup. "Tell him I'll call after the performance." Carol nodded once, carefully, like someone accepting something fragile. "Okay." They sat together for another 30 minutes, talking about smaller things. Carol's garden, the new roof she'd had put on the Beaumont house, a cousin's recent wedding. Careful, neutral territory. The kind of conversation that 2 people have when they are practicing being in the same room again after a long absence. When Renee walked out onto Lower Greenville and the October air hit her face, she stood on the sidewalk for a moment and let herself feel the full weight of the morning. Then she put in her earbuds, pulled up her rehearsal tracks, and started walking. 6 days before the gala. Danny had been at the Meyerson since 7 in the morning, supervising the load-in of the production equipment. 3 trucks had arrived at the loading dock on the building's north side, carrying the rented stage extensions, lighting rigs, broadcast equipment, and the specific audio infrastructure he had specified in his technical rider response. The venue's in-house staff worked alongside his crew with the efficient coordination of people who had done this many times, though not usually at this scale. By noon, the stage had been transformed. The Meyerson's concert configuration, designed for orchestra, the pit open, the stage clean and acoustically precise, had been supplemented with a front stage extension that pushed the performance area 12 feet further into the hall, bringing the artists closer to the audience and creating the visual intimacy that Linda had requested. The lighting rig added 300 additional fixtures to the venue's permanent system. Broadcast cameras occupied their designated positions, The conflict with the monitors having been resolved through exactly the kind of careful negotiation Danny had anticipated. Both artists' audio teams had agreed to modified monitor positions in exchange for upgraded in-ear monitor systems that Danny had sourced from a rental house in Nashville. He stood at the front edge of the extension and looked out at the hall. With the lights up for the technical work, the full scale of the space was visible. The deep curve of the audience tiers, the warm wood paneling of the walls, the enormous acoustic baffles suspended from the ceiling that gave the Meyerson its legendary sound quality. It was a beautiful room. Pete appeared at his shoulder. "Line check is ready when you are." 10 minutes. Danny was still looking at the hall. "Pete." "Yeah." "You heard anything? From the crew?" A pause. Pete was 22 and had a face that was very poor at concealing information. "What kind of thing?" "About me. About a Fort Worth show." A longer pause. "I heard something," Pete said carefully. "A couple guys talking in the wing." "Yesterday?" "Yeah." Danny nodded slowly. And I didn't say anything because it's none of my business." "But—" Pete stopped. "Say it." "One of them was Ray Pruitt's assistant, guy named Craig. He's been talking." Pete hesitated. "I don't know how widely." Danny absorbed this. "Okay." He turned away from the hall. "Let's do the line check." He got through the afternoon on the discipline of work, the specific, absorbing focus of a complex technical task that demanded total attention. Line checks, level settings, frequency analysis, monitor mix verification, broadcast feed testing. Each element required his complete concentration, and he gave it, moving through the process with the systematic thoroughness that was both his professional strength and his emotional coping mechanism. He did not make phone calls. He did not address the whispers. He worked. At 4 in the afternoon, Linda arrived for a production update meeting. She found him at the sound console in the control booth, a position from which the entire hall was visible through the large glass window overlooking the stage. "It's starting to look like a show," she said, standing beside him and looking down at the transformed stage. "It'll look like one by Friday." He turned in his chair. "I need to tell you something." Her expression shifted slightly. The particular alertness of someone who has spent the last several weeks waiting for bad news. "Tell me." "There are members of the crew who know about an incident in my past. A production problem at a venue outside Fort Worth 7 years ago. It wasn't a safety issue. Nobody was hurt. It was a professional error that damaged the production and my relationship with the agency involved." He kept his voice level and his eyes on hers. "I should have told you when I was hired." Linda was quiet for a moment. Outside the booth window, the stage lights shifted as a lighting technician made an adjustment from the floor. "What happened?" she asked. He told her, concisely and completely. The Fort Worth venue, the sound issue that had been the result of his miscalculation during setup, the artist who had walked off stage, the contract dispute that followed. He told her about the 3 years of rebuilding. He did not minimize or embellish. When he was done, Linda looked at the stage for a moment. "Why didn't you tell me when you were hired?" she asked. "Because I was afraid you'd give the job to someone else." "Would you have been wrong?" A beat. "Probably not." "Okay." She turned to look at him directly. "Are you the same person who made that mistake?" "No." "Can you make me the same promise right now that you made me implicitly when you accepted this job?" "Yes." She held his gaze for another moment. Then she nodded once. "Then that's where we are." She turned back to the window. "If anyone on this crew has a problem with their assignment, I want to know. You understand?" "Yes." "And Danny—" She paused. "Don't keep anything else from me." "I won't." She left him in the booth, and he turned back to the console and the tightness in his chest, which had been present for 4 days since the conversation in the wing, released by some increment that he couldn't precisely measure, but could feel. Renee rehearsed every day that week. Morning sessions at the Sundown studio with Kevin and Alicia, and then solo sessions in the evenings in her apartment, sitting on her bed with her acoustic guitar and singing the 3 songs into the quiet of her room until they were as natural as breathing. She also, on Wednesday of that week, received a phone call from a woman named Janet Farrow, who was the artistic coordinator for the Lone Star Hearts Gala, and was calling about what she described as a small logistical matter. "We're moving the opening act start time," Janet said, in the pleasant but efficient tone of someone who coordinates large events for a living. 7 o'clock is now 6:45, 15 minutes earlier. We've had some adjustments to the program flow. "That's fine," Renee said. "Also," a brief pause, "Mr. Strait's team has requested a brief meet and greet with all performers during the pre-show period. Just informal, nothing public. He does this at most of his charity events. He likes to know who he's sharing the evening with." Renee sat down on her couch. "George Strait wants to meet me." "George Strait would like to say hello to all the performers, yes." Janet's tone was carefully neutral. "It'll be backstage, around 5:30, 15 minutes or so." After the call, Renee sat on her couch for a while with her guitar across her knees, not playing it. The prospect of meeting George Strait, the king of country, the man with 60 #1 singles, the most decorated country artist in history, was simultaneously thrilling and completely paralyzing. She called Bill Ashford. "I know," he said immediately. "Janet called me too. Don't overthink it. He wants to meet me. He wants to say hello. Big difference." "Bill, Renee, you've been performing since you were 7 years old. You have handled every room you've ever walked into. This is a bigger room. Same skill set." She exhaled. "Okay, how are the songs?" "They're good. They're really good." "Good. Keep them that way." She hung up and picked up her guitar and played the opening chord of Steady, the one that always settled her. A simple open G that rang clean and full in the apartment's quiet, and felt, in this moment, like something her grandmother might have recognized. On Thursday, 5 days before the gala, Danny was called into an unexpected meeting. He arrived at the Meyerson at 8:30 to find Linda already there, which was unusual. She was typically in the administrative offices until mid-morning. She was standing in the main lobby with a man he didn't recognize, late 40s, well-dressed, with the particular polished ease of someone accustomed to operating in professional environments. "Danny, this is Robert Hale," Linda said. "He's representing one of our primary gala sponsors." Hale extended his hand. "Callaway Energy. We're the presenting sponsor of the event." His grip was firm, and his smile was measured. "I've been hearing some things about your background that I wanted to address directly." Danny felt the familiar cold weight settle in his chest. He kept his expression neutral. "What things?" "A production incident. Fort Worth. 7 years ago." Hale's tone was not hostile exactly, but it carried the precision of someone who had done research and intended to use it. "The agency involved was one that we have a relationship with. When this gala came to our attention as a sponsorship opportunity, and we saw your name on the production team, we felt it was appropriate to raise the issue." Linda spoke before Danny could. "I'm aware of Danny's history with that production, Robert. We've discussed it. I've made my assessment." Hale looked at her. "Callaway Energy has committed $400,000 to this event, Linda. That level of investment naturally comes with some interest in the quality of execution. And I appreciate that, deeply. But production decisions are mine to make." Her voice was calm and entirely unyielding. "Danny is the audio director for this event, and that's not changing." A brief silence. Hale held Linda's gaze for a moment, then shifted his attention back to Danny. "I hope you understand the stakes here." "I do," Danny said. Good. Hale nodded once, adjusted his jacket, and turned to leave. At the lobby doors, he paused. Beautiful venue, by the way. And then he was gone. In the silence that followed, Danny turned to Linda. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, she said simply. She picked up her portfolio from the lobby reception desk. I made a decision, and I'm standing behind it. That's how this works. She looked at him. Now let's get to work. The Friday before the gala. The Meyerson was in a state of controlled intensity. The particular atmospheric pressure of a venue in the final stages of preparation for a major event. Every available surface backstage was occupied. Racks of formal wear for the production staff, tables covered in name placards and event programs, equipment cases stacked in orderly rows in the loading area. The floral team had been working since 7 in the morning, and the lobby was beginning to smell like October and white roses. Danny's team ran the first full technical rehearsal at 9. No performers. This was a cue-to-cue run, working through every lighting state, audio configuration, and broadcast transition in sequence. It took 4 hours and identified 11 technical issues, all of which Danny cataloged and addressed before the afternoon. Linda moved through the building like a controlled current, touching every element with the focused efficiency of someone who has been preparing for this moment for over a year. She checked floral arrangements, reviewed seating charts with the events coordinator, walked the donor registration area, approved the final printing of the programs, tasted the catering samples, and approved all but one, which she sent back with specific notes. At 2 in the afternoon, she sat down in her office with a cup of coffee and her phone and called Tom. It was not a Tuesday or a Saturday. He answered on the second ring, which meant he had seen her name and chosen to pick up quickly, which meant she had learned to read these small signals that he was in a good mood. "Hey," he said. "Hey." She turned her chair toward the window. "Is Mia around?" "She's at school. Home at 3:30. Can you tell her I called, and that I'll see her Sunday?" "Sure." A pause. "How are you doing?" "I'm fine. Almost ready." She looked at the Dallas skyline through her office window, the glass towers catching the afternoon light, the familiar geometry of a city she had lived in for 20 years. "Tom." "Yeah. Thank you for taking Mia tomorrow." "Of course." His voice was warm and simple. This was the thing about Tom that had always been true. His warmth was uncomplicated, never contingent. It was a quality she had taken for granted for too long, and recognized clearly now with the particular acuity of something you understand better from a distance. "How are you, really?" She considered the question honestly. "Tired," she said, "but ready, I think." "You're going to be great, Linda." She closed her eyes for 1 second. "Yeah," she said. "I think so." She got through the rest of the afternoon on the momentum of everything that needed doing, which was considerable. At 6 o'clock, with the building settling into its evening quiet, she sat in the empty concert hall for 15 minutes, alone on the stage, looking out at the seats, letting the hall be what it was, large and beautiful, and waiting. 12 years ago, she had sat in a hall very much like this one and listened to George Strait perform at an arena in San Antonio with Tom on their 3rd date. She had not thought about that evening in a long time. She thought about it now. The way the music had felt physical. The way the whole arena had seemed to breathe in unison. The way Tom had put his arm around her during the slow songs. And she had leaned into him without thinking. She sat with the memory for a moment. Then she stood up, straightened her blazer, and went back to work. That same Friday evening, Renee was at her apartment on Gaston Avenue, running through her set one final time. Kevin and Alicia had signed off hours ago. There was nothing more the 3 of them could do together, and they all knew it. The preparation was complete. What remained was the execution, and that was Renee's alone. She sat on her bed with her acoustic guitar and sang all 3 songs straight through, just voice and strings, stripped of everything else. The songs sounded true. They sounded in the quiet of her apartment with the city noise filtering through the windows, like the most honest versions of themselves. When she finished, she sat in the quiet for a while. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. "Thinking of you. You're going to be wonderful." Renee looked at the message for a moment. Then she typed, "Thank you, Mom." She set the guitar in its stand and looked around her apartment. The small framed photos on the wall, the stack of notebooks on her desk, the half-full bookshelves, the window that faced east and caught the morning light. 24 years old, and this was the life she had built. Specific, intentional, full of music and effort, and the particular kind of hope that comes from deciding what you want and refusing to let go of it. She thought about her father in Houston, sick, asking for her. She had told her mother, after the performance. That felt right. That felt like the only way to hold all of it at once, to put the things she could not yet address in a place where they would wait, and to bring everything she had to the stage tomorrow night. She turned off the lights and lay down, and, against all expectation, fell asleep quickly and deeply. Danny arrived at the Meyerson at 6:30 on Saturday morning. The sun had not yet fully cleared the horizon, and the arts district was quiet. That particular urban quiet of early morning in a part of the city that comes fully alive only in the evenings. A few cars moved along Flora Street. A solitary jogger crossed through the Bywaters Park side path. The building's exterior lighting cast the Meyerson's glass curves in a pale amber glow. Danny had a key card to the loading dock. He let himself in, walked through the backstage corridor, still dark, still quiet, and emerged onto the stage. He stood there for a minute in the dim light, with the empty hall around him, and the smell of the previous day's floral work still faintly present in the air. 7 years ago in Fort Worth, he had made a decision under pressure that he had known was wrong in the moment he made it. Not a big decision. Not a moral failure. Not anything that required legal resolution. Just a technical call made in haste, overriding an instinct that had been correct. Because he had been tired and impatient and had trusted his ego more than his preparation. The artist had been mid-set, the monitor problem had compounded, and the whole evening had unraveled in the way that a precise machine unravels when a single component fails. He had known better. He had done it anyway. He had spent 7 years making sure he never did that again. He walked to the sound console, powered it on, and began his final pre-show checks with the calm, methodical attention of a person who has made his peace with something and converted it into discipline. By 7:30, Pete arrived. By 8, the full production crew was in the building. By 9, Renee Holbrook was in the stage-left dressing room with her guitar, a cup of herbal tea, and the focused stillness of a performer who has left everything outside the door. By 10, the Meyerson Symphony Center was alive. The afternoon passed in the compressed, heightened time of event days, where each hour felt both very long and very short. And the ordinary world, traffic on Woodall Rogers, the lunch crowd at the restaurants on Ross Avenue, the Saturday afternoon routine of the city, continued in a parallel dimension that felt entirely disconnected from what was happening inside the Meyerson's walls. Danny ran final line checks at 11 and 2. Linda walked the donor registration area at noon and approved the final table arrangements at 1. The catering team arrived at 2:30 and began the setup for the cocktail reception that would precede the concert. The production staff changed into their formal black attire in the backstage corridors while continuing to work, the specific professionalism of event crew on show day. At 3 o'clock, George Strait arrived. He came through the loading dock entrance. No motorcade, no elaborate arrival, just a black SUV and a small team of 3 people. He was 72 years old and looked exactly like himself. Tall, lean, unhurried, wearing jeans and a button-down shirt with the kind of easy, settled authority of a man who has long since stopped needing to prove anything to anyone. His hat was in his hand. Danny was on stage when the artist liaison brought George Strait through the backstage corridor. They crossed paths in the stage left wing. "Mr. Strait," Danny extended his hand. "Danny Kowalski, audio director." George Strait shook his hand with a firm, direct grip. "You got my monitor notes?" "Yes, sir. Everything's set to your spec." "Good." His eyes moved briefly across the stage setup with the practiced assessment of a man who has been standing on stages for 5 decades. "It's a beautiful room. Best acoustic hall in Dallas," Danny said. George Strait looked back at him. A brief, measured pause, the kind that precedes something said directly. "I've heard good things about your work." Danny held his gaze. "Thank you. Let's have a good show." "We will." They had a good show. Gloria Estefan arrived at 4. She was 67 and carried herself with the particular grace of someone whose physical presence has always been her instrument. The bus accident in 1990, the recovery, the return to the stage, had given her a quality that was part strength and part deliberate joy, as though every performance was chosen rather than given. She was warm with the crew, professional with the technical team, and spent 40 minutes in her dressing room with her music director, reviewing the set. At 5:30, the backstage area was configured for the pre-show meet and greet that Janet Farrow had coordinated. A simple setup. A private room off the main backstage corridor, with comfortable seating, a small refreshment table, and the particular atmosphere of a space that has been prepared for people who don't need anything elaborate. Renee arrived at 5:28, 2 minutes early, wearing the outfit she had chosen and reconsidered and chosen again over the past 3 days. A deep burgundy dress, simple and precise, with her hair down and a pair of small gold earrings that had belonged to her grandmother Dorothy. She had her phone in her small clutch, and her hands were steady. Bill Ashford was not there. This was performers only. No managers, no handlers. Just the people who were going to be on stage. She stood near the refreshment table and poured herself a glass of water and reminded herself, quietly but firmly, of every room she had ever walked into and handled. George Strait came in at 5:32. Gloria Estefan entered 30 seconds behind him, accompanied by her music director, who waited near the door while Gloria crossed the room with the easy warmth of someone for whom meeting new people is genuinely pleasurable rather than performatively so. "You must be Renee," Gloria said, extending both hands in the Cuban way, not a handshake, but something warmer, a held greeting. Her accent was light but present, Miami overlaid with the particular music of a Cuban upbringing. "I listened to a clip of you online. That voice, mija, that voice is something." Renee felt heat rise in her face and was grateful for the warm lighting. "Thank you. That means thank you." George Strait had found his way to the refreshment table and poured himself a coffee. He turned and looked at Renee, with the same measured, direct attention he had given Danny in the wing that afternoon. "You write your own songs?" he asked. "Yes, sir." "All 3 tonight are yours?" "Yes." He nodded once. "Good. That's the only kind worth doing." He picked up his coffee. "You nervous?" Renee considered giving him the professional answer, the confident answer, the answer that said she was a prepared performer who handled pressure well. Instead, she heard herself say, "Yes." The corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile. Something quieter than that. More genuine. "That's good too," he said. means you care about it. Gloria was watching this exchange with an expression that was warmly amused. "She looks like she's been doing this forever," she said to George, as though Renee weren't standing 2 feet away. "She has," Renee said, and surprised herself by meaning it entirely. The 15 minutes passed with the comfortable, low-key ease of professionals who share the same love for something. They talked briefly about the hall. Both George and Gloria had performed in similar acoustic venues and had specific appreciation for the challenges and rewards of them. They talked about Dallas, which Gloria had toured through many times, and George had a lifelong connection to, given his Texas roots in Poteet, 300 miles to the southwest. They talked about the foundation and the cause, the children with rare diseases whose families would be in the audience tonight. And the conversation took on the particular weight of people who understand that what they are about to do is not merely entertainment. When Janet Farrow appeared in the doorway to signal the end of the pre-show window, Renee found herself reluctant to leave the room. "Good luck tonight," George Strait said to her as they moved toward the door. He said it the way you say something you mean, not the way you say something because it's appropriate. "Thank you," Renee said, "for talking to me like a colleague." He gave her that quiet, almost smile again. "You are one," he said. And then he was gone down the corridor, and Renee was standing in the hallway with her hands clasped and her heart very full. The donors began arriving at 6. Linda stood at the top of the main lobby staircase and watched them come in. Dallas's philanthropic class in its finest formal wear. The men in dark suits and tuxedos. The women in gowns that represented the full spectrum of what an expensive evening calls for. She recognized faces. Major donors she had cultivated over 3 years. Board members, corporate representatives, community figures who had supported the foundation since its early days. She greeted each of them personally, moving through the cocktail reception with the practiced ease of someone who is genuinely glad to see these people, and also needs them to have a perfect evening. She was wearing a deep blue gown she had bought 2 months ago and not tried on again until this morning, and which fit her as though it had been made for her. Her hair was down, which she rarely wore, and she had taken more care than usual with everything. Not because she was vain about it, but because tonight she felt, for the first time in a very long time, like someone who had earned the right to show up fully. At 6:15, Robert Hale found her near the cocktail bar. He was in a tuxedo, his wife at his arm, and his expression had softened from its Friday afternoon precision into something more socially benign. "The room looks extraordinary," he said. "Thank you, Robert. You've done remarkable work." He paused, and she could see him choosing his next words with care. "I may have spoken out of turn yesterday." "You may have," she agreed, pleasantly, without mercy. He had the grace to accept this. "Enjoy tonight," he said. "I intend to," she said. She moved away through the crowd and found herself at 6:30, standing alone for a moment near the entrance to the concert hall, looking through the open doors at the transformed space, the lit stage, the white roses lining the front rows, the warm amber glow of the house lighting, the 1,200 seats beginning to fill. From this angle, at this distance, the stage looked like what it was, a place where something important was about to happen. She thought of Mia, at home with Tom right now, probably eating dinner and watching television, the 9-year-old version of a Saturday night. She thought of Tom's voice on the phone. "You're going to be great, Linda." She took out her phone and sent him a quick text. "It's beautiful in here. Wish you could see it." His response came in 30 seconds. "I can imagine it. Go get him." She put her phone away and walked into the hall. At 6:42, 3 minutes before showtime, Danny Kowalski was at the sound console in the production booth with Pete beside him and every system green. He had checked everything. He had checked it again. He had walked the stage twice, verified every input, confirmed every monitor level with both artists' audio teams, tested the broadcast feed, and run a final communications check with his crew. There was nothing more to prepare. There was only the show. He looked out through the booth window at the filled hall. 1,200 people arranged in the lower tiers, the lights just beginning their slow pre-show fade. The stage empty and lit and waiting. He thought about Fort Worth. He let himself think about it clearly, one last time. The specific moment 7 years ago when he had made the wrong call. The specific quality of the silence after the artist walked off. The specific weight of knowing you have failed something important. He let himself remember it fully and exactly. Then he turned to his console and did his job. The house lights went to half at 6:44. In the stage left wing, Renee Holbrook stood with her acoustic guitar at her side and felt the sound of 1,200 conversations compress into the expectant hush that precedes a performance. She could see the stage from where she stood, the clean pool of light at center, the gleam of the microphone stand. Kevin and Alicia were positioned at their instruments behind the curtain line, already in place. Kevin gave her a small nod. Alicia spun one drumstick once, twice, her pre-show ritual. Janet Farrow appeared at Renee's elbow. 90 seconds. Renee took one slow breath in through her nose. She thought about Dorothy Holbrook in Beaumont, who had raised 4 children alone and never once described it as extraordinary. She thought about the YMCA on Harry Hines and the kids pressing piano keys with enthusiastic inaccuracy. She thought about her father, sick in Houston, asking for her, something she would address, as promised, after tonight. She thought about her mother's face across the coffee shop table. I spent a long time not forgiving people. I don't think it helped me as much as I thought it would. She thought about what George Strait had said. You are one. The house lights went to black. The audience went perfectly, electrically quiet. Renee walked out onto the stage of the Meyerson Symphony Center. A single spotlight found her, just the guitar, just the microphone. The silence in the hall was the specific silence of 1,200 people giving their full attention, which is the rarest and most precious thing an audience can offer. She adjusted the microphone. She looked out at the room, not past it, not through it, but at it, the way her grandmother had always looked at everything, directly, without flinching. "Good evening, Dallas," she said. Her voice was steady and warm and completely her own. "My name is Renee Holbrook. I'm going to play you 3 songs that I wrote. They're about real things. I hope they find you." She played the opening chord of the first song. The room listened. She played for 22 minutes. She played the first song, which was called Gravel Road, about growing up in Beaumont, about the specific landscape of the Texas Gulf Coast, about the way a place shapes you even after you've left it. The audience was with her from the second verse. She played the second song, Before You Go, a slower piece, more stripped down, about the things people don't say to each other until it's almost too late. Somewhere in the second chorus, she heard the quality of quiet in the room shift, the way it shifts when a song has reached people in the specific place they needed to be reached. She let herself feel that without losing the performance. She played steady last. When the ground won't hold and the walls come in, I find you in the quiet. I start again. The final chord faded into the hall's beautiful acoustic decay, the specific quality of the Meyerson, where sound doesn't die abruptly, but lingers warmly, as though the room itself is reluctant to let it go. The silence lasted perhaps 3 seconds. Then 1,200 people began to applaud. Not politely, not the measured appreciation of a formal evening's warm-up act. Real applause, the kind that rises before people have consciously decided to give it, the kind that comes from the body before the mind has formed an opinion. Renee stood at the microphone and felt it wash over her, felt it the way you feel weather, something large and real that exists entirely outside of yourself. She said, "Thank you," and meant it completely. In the stage left wing, she walked off the stage and nearly ran directly into Gloria Estefan, who was in position for her own entrance with her band assembled behind her. Gloria Estefan looked at her and said, quietly and with total sincerity, "That last song. Dios mío." Renee's eyes went bright. She nodded once because she couldn't speak and stepped aside, and Gloria Estefan walked out onto the stage to the kind of welcome that only comes for people who have been beloved for decades. The next 90 minutes were, by any standard, extraordinary. Gloria Estefan played a set that moved through the full range of her catalog. The Miami Sound Machine era anthems that the crowd knew by heart. The quieter ballads that showcased the voice in its current form, richer and more textured than it had been in the high-speed years, carrying the weight of everything it had been through. She was magnetic and generous, dedicated songs to the families in the audience whose children lived with rare diseases, and reduced several sections of the hall to tears before bringing them back with the irresistible rhythm of conga and "Get on Your Feet." Then the lights changed. The hall went to a single warm amber, the particular quality of light associated with country music at its most essential, with honky-tonk and open road and everything true and direct about the American South. And George Strait walked onto the stage of the Meyerson Symphony Center, and 1,200 people rose to their feet before he had played a single note. He tipped his hat. He played for 50 minutes. He played songs that people had known for 30 years, songs that had been playing in cars and kitchens and bars across Texas for longer than some members of the audience had been alive. He played with the specific kind of authority that comes not from performance, but from truth, from being, genuinely and entirely, the thing you appear to be. Danny Kowalski watched it all from the production booth, managing the mix with the attentive precision of someone who loves music enough to disappear into the service of it. The monitors were perfect. The broadcast feed was clean. Every transition landed exactly where it was supposed to land. Beside him, Pete was watching the stage with his mouth slightly open, having arrived at that particular state of a young audio professional who suddenly understands viscerally why the job matters. "This is why," Danny said to him quietly, not taking his eyes off the console. Pete nodded without speaking. At the 50-minute mark, George Strait paused between songs. He looked to his left, toward the stage right wing, where Gloria Estefan had reappeared, visible to the audience now, already smiling. "I've been looking forward to this part of the evening," George Strait said, and his voice through the Meyerson system was warm and unhurried and entirely itself. "I don't share a microphone with just anybody, but tonight I'm happy to make an exception." He turned toward the wing. Gloria Estefan walked back onto the stage, and the hall responded with a sound that was something between applause and joy. The uninhibited reaction of 1,200 people experiencing something unexpected and wonderful. She embraced George Strait briefly, which produced another wave of sound from the audience, and then they both settled at their respective microphones, and her band meshed seamlessly with his. And the music director brought them in together. The song they had chosen, a decision Linda had made after 3 phone calls and much deliberation, selecting a piece that occupied the rare shared territory between country and pop, with a lyric about finding your way home, began with a single piano note. Danny watched the VU meters on his console. He watched the broadcast feed. He watched the stage, where 2 icons of American music were sharing 4 feet of hardwood and a microphone, and singing to a room that had gone perfectly, completely still. In the third row, a woman in her mid-40s reached quietly for her husband's hand in the dark. Her husband held it, without looking away from the stage. In the back of the house, near the sound control area, a member of the production crew who had been talking about Fort Worth whispered to the person beside him, "This mix is flawless." He didn't say it about anyone in particular. He just said it because it was true, and the night demanded honesty. In the stage left wing, Renee Holbrook stood and watched the two figures at the microphones from the side of the stage. Her guitar slung across her back, her arms crossed, her expression the expression of someone who is witnessing something they will remember for the rest of their life, and who knows it in real time. She thought about what it meant to share a stage. Not the stage itself, not the physical platform, but the thing underneath it. The willingness to show up completely, to offer the true version of yourself, to trust that it will be enough. She thought about her grandmother, who had done that every day without a stage, or an audience, or a microphone. She thought about her mother in a Mockingbird motel, who had driven 4 hours to say something difficult because some things needed to be said in person. She thought about her father, who had asked for a chance. When the ground won't hold, and the walls come in, I find you in the quiet, I start again. The song at center stage reached its final verse. George Strait and Gloria Estefan sang the last line together. Their voices entirely different and entirely complementary. The way things that seem unlike each other are sometimes revealed, in the right light and the right room, to be made of the same essential material. The final chord landed. The hall was silent for one breath, 2, 3. Then it erupted. Backstage, in the minutes after the show ended and the last curtain call had been taken, the corridors filled with the warm, exhausted glow of an event that has gone exactly right. Staff moved through the space with the loosened energy of people who have been holding tension for a long time and have just been permitted to release it. Donors pressed into the backstage reception area, champagne glasses in hand, still electric from what they had just experienced. Linda Calloway stood near the donor reception entrance and shook hands and accepted congratulations and said thank you with the genuine warmth of someone who has just survived something enormous. The numbers were not yet confirmed. The final accounting of donations and pledges would take several days. But the preliminary report from her development director, whispered in her ear 20 minutes ago, indicated they were significantly above target. 3 million was already confirmed. The final total, with late pledges, might reach 3.5. The foundation would survive the fiscal year. The foundation would thrive. She found a quiet corner near the end of the backstage corridor, away from the noise of the reception, and stood there for a moment with her back to the wall and her eyes closed. Just a moment. Just one. She took out her phone. She typed a message to Tom. "We did it. Over 3M confirmed. I'm going to cry in a hallway now." His response was immediate. "Go ahead. You've earned it." She laughed. A real laugh. Surprised out of her. The kind that releases something. She wasn't crying yet, but she understood that the option was available, and the knowledge of it felt like a gift. From the other end of the corridor, Danny appeared. He was carrying a cable case, still working, still managing the post-show wrap, but he paused when he saw her. "Linda." "Danny." A beat. 3 million? He said. 3.5, if the pledges hold. She straightened up from the wall. How was the mix? He allowed himself a small, real smile. "Perfect," he said. "I heard." She looked at him. "I told you." "You did." She pushed herself off the wall and straightened her gown. "Go finish your wrap out. And send me your invoice on Monday." I'm going to recommend you to every event director I know." He nodded once, the kind of nod that carries more than acknowledgement. "Thank you." She walked back toward the reception, and Danny carried his cable case toward the loading dock. And the Meyerson Symphony Center continued its night around them, filled with the sound of people who had just experienced something real. Renee found a quiet dressing room at the end of the backstage area and sat for a moment alone before the reception crowd arrived. She set her guitar carefully in its case, snapped the latches, and sat on the small couch with her hands in her lap. Her phone showed 4 messages. One from Bill Ashford. "Nashville called during the show. During. Call me first thing Sunday." One from Kevin Marsh. "That was everything. I mean that." One from Alicia Webb, which was simply a single fire emoji, which from Alicia was equivalent to a standing ovation. And one from her mother, who must have been watching the Foundation's live stream from her motel room on Mockingbird. "I watched the whole thing. You were everything I always knew you were." Dorothy would have been so proud. Renee read that last message twice. Then she set her phone down and let herself feel the full weight of the evening. The performance, the applause, the conversation with George Strait, the look on Gloria Estefan's face in the wing, the 3 songs she had written about real things and played for 1,200 people who had listened. She picked up her phone again and typed a message to her mother. "Are you still in Dallas?" "Yes." "At the motel. Stay for breakfast tomorrow." "I'll come to you." A long pause. Then, "I'd love that." Renee put her phone in her clutch. She stood, picked up her guitar case, and walked toward the backstage reception, where the night was still very much alive. Voices and music, and the sound of people celebrating something that had mattered. She stepped into the light. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning in November, Renee Holbrook was sitting in Bill Ashford's office in Addison with a contract from Clearwater Road Records on the desk between them. It was a development deal, modest in financial terms, significant in every other way. Recording sessions in Nashville scheduled for January. A spring single release. A regional tour supporting a mid-level country act with solid market penetration in Texas, Oklahoma, and Tennessee. Bill was barely containing himself. Renee was reading the contract with the careful attention of someone who has learned not to let excitement outrun discernment. "It's a good deal," Bill said. "It's not the biggest deal, but it's the right deal. It's the door that leads to the next door." "I know," she said. She turned to the final page. "I want to add one date to the schedule." "What date?" "Houston. Before Nashville." She looked up. "I need to make a stop in Houston first." Bill understood without asking. "Done," he said. Renee turned back to the contract. Outside the office window, the November sky over Addison was clear and very blue. The specific clear blue of Texas in autumn that always felt to her like possibility, like a sky that had made its mind up and had no intention of going back. She picked up the pen. On the same Tuesday morning, Danny Kowalski was in his Deep Ellum studio, working on the audio post-production for the gala's broadcast recording. The Foundation had commissioned a documentary edit of the evening, a 90-minute version of the show for distribution to partner hospitals and educational institutions, so that families who hadn't been able to attend could experience the night. He had been working on it for a week. He moved through the footage with the same systematic attention he brought to everything, making precise edits, balancing the audio to translate the live acoustic experience into something that worked on a screen in a hospital room or a classroom. It was careful, quiet work, the kind that no one would particularly notice, but that mattered in the cumulative way that careful work always mattered. At 11 o'clock, he received an email from an event production company in Austin, a major agency with a national client roster, the kind of operation that had been out of his reach 2 years ago. They had seen his name on the Lone Star Hearts Gala credits. They wanted to discuss a potential contract for their 2025 touring season. He read the email twice. Then he set his phone face down on the console and went back to work, because the work in front of him was not finished, and it needed to be finished properly. He would reply to the Austin email at the end of the day. He let himself feel, briefly and without fanfare, the specific satisfaction of having done something well when it mattered. Then he put on his headphones and kept going. Linda Calloway's divorce proceedings began in February. Not because anything dramatic had happened, not because of a final rupture, but because she and Tom had talked, genuinely and at length, over the 4 months following the gala, and had arrived together at the understanding that what they needed from their lives had diverged too far for the gap to be bridged. The decision was sad in the way that true things are sometimes sad, but it was also, in its own way, an act of clarity and honesty, which were the qualities that Linda had always tried to live by and had not always managed. Mia took it with the resilience of a 9-year-old who has 2 parents who love her and have decided to stop pretending that love is sufficient for everything. Linda remained in the Lakewood house. Tom moved into a larger apartment near White Rock Lake, the kind with a room for Mia and a back porch that got evening sun. They co-parented with the careful, genuine goodwill of people who had once been their best selves for each other and were determined to remain that in a different configuration. On a Saturday morning in March, Linda took Mia to the Meyerson for a children's matinee, a youth symphony performance. The hall reconfigured back to its original concert arrangement, the stage extension gone. The room returned to its acoustic purpose. They sat in the 3rd row. At one point during the performance, a young soloist, perhaps 12 years old, playing a violin piece that required the particular combination of technical precision and emotional openness that is the hardest thing in music to achieve. Mia reached over and took Linda's hand. Linda held it. The music filled the hall the way the Meyersons' music always filled the hall. Completely, warmly, with the specific quality of a room that was designed to hold sound and offer it back to the people inside. Linda looked at the stage. She thought about one night in October, and a microphone shared between 2 people who came from different directions and found the same place, and the room that had held its breath and then exhaled in a single, unified sound. She thought, this is what we were building it for. She held her daughter's hand and listened to the music.